Is your laptop already?
Oh,
Wait,
there it is.
there it is. Yay! Apparently, we just needed to negotiate with the demons. Thank you!
Thank you, MAGFest staff.
Well, luckily, we're actually still 5 minutes early. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. Thank you all for coming to The Wheels That Break Us, opting into systemic and personal suffering in your gameplay. This panel will be about actually all sorts of analog games. So you might hear a little bit about tabletop, might hear a little bit about LARP, might even hear a little bit about the more Vorthos style of Magic play. My name is Jacqueline Brick. You will find me most places as Jax Romana. I am a tabletop, several times award-winning tabletop designer, editor, writer, verber of games. I really like writing horror. You may have seen my work on Changeling the Lost, Vampire the Masquerade 5th Edition, Deviant the Renegades, Exalted Essence, and many, many more fine products. I also am the English language editor for Cult Divinity Lost. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I'm going to turn it over to Soraya, who is our next panelist.
Hello. I'm Soraya Spinner. You can find me on most platforms as Soraya Ploitation. My pronouns are they, them. I am a sensitivity reader and consultant and a LARP designer. I write a lot of historical fanfic games, as we called them. And I also enjoy writing horror. I like writing about obviously history, fantasy, anything gothic or exploitative, hence the Soraya Ploitation. And yeah, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie. Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Putum. I publish games as Luck of the Harbor. You can find me online anywhere you'd like to at Luck of the Harbor. I basically exclusively write games about queer found families. Yeah, check out my stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm Amber Logston. My pronouns are she, they. You can find me anywhere there's internet at the Space Jamber, because one time I got really drunk and watched the Space Jam, and I was like, what if I made that my Instagram handle? I am an Emmy award-winning TTRPG writer for Chew, also Emmy nominated for Necrobiotic and for Flabbergasted. You can also find my work across the TTRPG space. I'm also the marketing manager over at Labyrinth Games and Puzzles over in Eastern Market. Yay. So we love local heroes. So I am reinvigorating my LARP era as a recovering TTRPG influencer, and just understanding the depths and the beauty and like suffering. So thank you so much for having us, Jack. I'm really excited.
Yeah. All right, Nat, you wanted to say something to the queer folks in the audience?
Oh, yeah, I was going to do it at the end, but I'm going to do it at the beginning, I guess. Yeah, we're good. So one thing I wanted to plug, but because I'm assuming some of you are queer, probably. Yeah. Is we're in a scary time right now, and something that's been getting me through is reading the things that queer people who've been through past scary times have written. So I want to encourage all of you, if you have an idea, just write it. Get it out there. Put it up on Itch, get people to read it. We have to document who we are, how we're feeling, and that we were here. So if you have an idea, write it. Don't self-edit yourself. Just put your ideas out there.
Done is beautiful, and perfection is the enemy of the done.
As a recovering historian, please more queer stories out there.
Yeah.
None of this, they were roommates bullshit. Like, let them know.
Yeah. This was a bit of a daring panel pitch even before everything. So it's going to be a little bit spicier than it was originally going to be. And if you're down for that, hell yeah, let's go.
Let's go on this ride.
All right, so we're primarily going to talk about 3 different kinds of games, and we're going to get some definitions on the screen. And these 3 different kinds of games sort of nest into each other. So we're going to start with the more broad type of game, and then we're going to go narrower and narrower, okay? So our important definitions are Type 2 gameplay, systemic horror games, and dystopian games. We're going to define each of these in turn. So type 2 gameplay, these are our definitions. Would anybody like to read the first quote? Go ahead.
This hurts. Everything hurts, and I'm crying. I'll be so happy to have gone through it all in the end.
All right. Would anybody like to read the second quote? Go ahead.
You've already lost, so it's just about being hot.
Hell yeah. All right, so type 2 gameplay, it's a term that we get from LARPing. It is a game in which suffering, loss, pain, tears, and power exchange are the goal. It's not fun, but it's absolutely not a cheerful or hopeful sort of fun, and it's not the sort of fun where you're looking to like win or accomplish something. Now, when I say accomplish something, what I mean is you'll see a lot of games coming out, especially recently, where it's like, oh, you're gonna do the revolution, capital T, capital R. And like in a type 2 game, you're not doing the revolution, but you may, for example, be building a found family, or you may be finding a way to survive under something, or maybe your character is in a toxic relationship, and what you're doing is exploring that toxic relationship and what your character gets out of that. You guys may recognize some of these games. Bluebeard's Bride, personal favorite, Wraith the Oblivion, 10 Candles. If you don't recognize any of these games, I'm going to strongly suggest that you check them out after this panel. Our next type of gameplay is systemic horror games. Who wants to read the first quote? Raise your hand, I don't.
I'll do it.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, you're expected to go to work, fill out forms on your computer, ignore the abyssal presence on the 15th floor, take a lunch break, have a meeting to a room full of executives that you can't quite make out the faces of because your eyes just slip over them, clock out, go home, sleep, and repeat over and over again? Neat!
Would anybody like to read the second quote? Bishop, go ahead.
I haven't heard systemic horror used as a genre before, but just from the natural language definition, I think of things like healthcare violence and medical insurance oppression, pervasive racism and police abuse of power, and other such neoliberal corporate fuckery.
That was smooth as fuck. Thank you. So these are games in which the world itself is against you. You cannot defeat a villain for everything to be okay. So, Changeling the Lost, Cult Divinity Lost, Davey of the Renegades, Red Markets, Delta Green. These are games where the setting itself is hostile. It can also be a game where the setting itself is hostile and that is supernatural, which is not the case for our final type of game. Who wants to read the first quote? Anybody? Go ahead.
To me, dystopian games are about the potential for release and the threat of containment. I do think there's another angle, which is a sort of comfort beneath the weight vibe, where people are surviving despite constant oppression. There's no escape, only community.
Woo! Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. And who wants to read the second quote? Anybody? Yeah, go ahead.
Dystopian games are largely about the horror of the state, being forced to make hard choices. It's actually easy to survive in a dystopia if you just go along with it.
Thank you. So for the purposes of this panel, and this is just for this panel and this discussion, you will probably hear it defined differently elsewhere, but to bound this discussion, this is the definition that we are using. A dystopian game is specifically a systemic horror game in which every form of violence and every moment of hope is perpetrated by normal humans. The horror comes from in-game social systems and expectations, not from, Jigsaw, which, side note, the fucking Saw series is bullshit. It is literally just Calvinist morality imposed on a... I have a whole rant about that. That's its own panel. Not from a Jigsaw or Cthulhu or even the presence of gore particularly, though gore levels can vary. You might see this, for example, in Splatterpunk, which is Ziggurat, The Company, Beneath Hallowed Halls. A lot of dark academia sort of games fit into this. Dead Air, Do Not Lie Down, Do Not Roll Over. This game contains absolutely no triggering material, which is one of the single most triggering games I've ever read if you have childhood trauma. So just be careful when you read that game. It is a beautiful game, but you do need to go into it understanding that. So we're going to have a chat with our lovely panelists, and we're going to start with the obvious question. Why the fuck do we play these games?
Why not?
I'm a masochist.
I often joke with my role-playing game friends when I'm doing this. The thing I get out of this is getting to experience a catharsis for a trauma that isn't mine. I get to experience someone else's trauma, a fictional characters, and process that, and that distance makes it easier.
Yeah, that's actually very close to my response. Is I have a lot of personal trauma that goes into my gameplay and my game writing. And it does help to have a filter so that it's not like, ooh, Amber's writing about her abusive relationship again. It's, oh, we're going to talk about how, community can actually help lift you up in the throes of insert scary thing here. So it really does help to have that little bit of filter and distance to be able to process the horrors that have happened in real life. So yeah.
And this question kind of feeds into it. What do we get out of them? I mean, I'll build off Amber's answer while you guys think about that. For me, one of the single most emotionally truthful ways I've ever found to discuss my trauma is fantasy. Specifically because if you discuss the mechanics of the trauma, you're not understanding that feeling of annihilative terror that is under all of it. Trauma is very weird. There's actually academic papers on temporal displacement with trauma. So someone can be talking to you in the now and they can actually be experiencing it as though it were 3 years ago. You can have hypervigilant overcompensation, which is, I don't know, you were bit by a dog and you have dog trauma, and somebody who you meet has a dog tattoo and all you can see in that moment is the dog, and you know that dog is going to bite you, when in reality that's not the case. But in a fantasy story like Changeling the Lost, well, someone who has that dog tattoo has an intimate connection to that dog, and the threat you are reacting to is real because it feels real. And it is a way of exploring it without people repeatedly going, oh, come on, it's not that bad. It's just a tattoo of a dog. Why are you... Yeah. So being able to sort of experience that emotional truth in a fiction setting is really what I get out of it. And it allows me to communicate my experiences a lot more honestly and a lot more kindly to people who may not understand them.
So like I said, I am a recovering historian. I play and I write a lot of historical games because for me, the scariest shit out there is the past. And it gives me a way to see how everyday people survived under it and what comes up naturally sometimes. Just being able to look and see oh, okay, this game is set in the 20s. People are playing oppressors. This is how we are coming together and fighting this or surviving under this. And it's really fascinating to see. And it also gives a lot of context to how people in the past did it.
One thing I often find I get out of these games is...
You might want to move the microphone a little
Okay,
closer.
move closer. Hi, Amber. One thing I often find I get out of these games is I'm an optimist, and I find myself clinging to the small wins that my characters get. We can't defeat the corporate system. We can't do that, but my character made a new friend today, and that's pretty nice. And being able to bring that to my real life when we're living in the real Type 2 fun we're all having right now, and hold on to the small wins, the small things that are achievable, and remembering that those matter, yeah.
In the same vein there, actually, I mean, not to repeat what anyone else said. Do you want me to grab that? Okay. What I also get out of Type 2 play is empathy. Experiencing a life that I am privileged to not have to experience on the day-to-day. Even though outside of games, I do unfortunately still exist as a queer disabled woman in a system that is targeting queer disabled women and also trans women and also people of color and just at historically bad, terrible levels. But it allows me to be able to see into the lives of other people that I won't be able to experience that, but I will be able to have that little bit of solidarity and understand how we can still, despite the suffering, reach out to each other in real life outside of game and lift each other up. And even though, like we've kind of echoed, shit's all bad in real life and in the game, but god damn it, do the most beautiful things happen when everyone is collectively suffering, but you come together for like a grape or a strawberry or a chicken nugget, and it's just
Sorry,
it's a joyous occasion.
Oh my God. Sorry, that was a reference to a LARP that I ran where several of the people in this room have played. And the corporate class would occasionally reward the underclass with strawberries. It was
Some
a
of us
thing.
gave cheesecake.
Oh yeah, there was cheesecake too. Yeah.
I did get a chicken nugget.
Right, you got a chicken nugget from the cops.
I did.
It is worth noting about the empathy thing, and I think you're absolutely correct. There is a problem among certain, shall we say, gamers of my color, where we mistake that cognitive empathy and that invitation to step into that role of, oh, I know all about that now.
Right.
And like, it's a doorway, right? Like, yes, you will get, you get that practice with empathy, but unless you're actually exercising that empathy, you don't somehow magically get, and that wasn't a correction.
Okay.
That was meant to be a build on the thing you said.
Absolutely.
I do kind of want to build off an empathy in a different direction.
Go ahead.
It's also just nice, well, maybe not nice, but just to see how people react to being the target of cruelty or abuse with getting a little bit of empathy. And it kind of, it's a balancing act a little bit. You have that big moment of abuse and cruelty, and then other characters either rally around or use it as a point to go, maybe we should try and change things. It's like that first step. It's not revolution with a capital R,
It's
but
an impetus, yeah.
Right.
but it's like ... lowercase r.
Yeah. It's that personal revolution that we do every day, which I realized I wish a lot of people would understand that we are in the process of making the revolution. The revolution is not a point in time. Hello, I have feelings about anarchist theory. Ask me about them after the panel. So speaking of theory and learning things from people, can we learn anything from Type 2 games? Or is that the point? Is it a point?
Let me clarify. Is the question, can we learn anything from Type 2? And if so, is there a point to learning it? Or
Really, is it the purpose of Type 2 games to teach us things?
okay.
I'm gonna go no. I think you can just have a miserable time for fun and not learn anything.
You know what, that's fair.
I think it's an unintended side effect.
Yeah. I personally don't think it's a yes or no. I think it actually depends on the game and the expectations set forward within the game. But yes, I think we can learn things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the point. Because some people, hello, Cassandra, in the front row, because some people love to be what we call suffer puppets. And suffer puppets are the person you go, hey, so this person's just going to be mean to you the whole night. And you go, okay, that makes me feel good. It makes me feel important. I love it. Thank you.
The best moment of any Suffer Puppets gameplay is that moment where you're sobbing and crying and something horrible has just happened and somebody goes to you, the okay check-in, just to make sure you're okay. And then they go
Yeah.
through the tears, just crying.
Do you want to tell us about that moment in what the hell's it called? The vampire game?
Jameer?
No.
Oh.
No, the Ryan's game.
Oh my God. I didn't think I was going to talk about monstrosity.
Yeah, monstrosity. The vampire lope.
He's going to kill me for plugging this. No, he's not.
No, he's
Okay.
not. He wants you to plug it.
He wants me to plug it.
Yeah. God.
Hi. So I really like playing vampires, okay?
Gross.
And with playing vampires, there's a lot of different types of vampires. We all know, but sometimes you just want to get to like the cruelty. The cruelty is the point. And I play in this game through Sinking Ship Creations, Monstrosity, if you're ever interested, where it's vampires and humans, and it's not lighthearted, fun Twilight vampires. It's not even Vampire the Masquerade. This is holy shit. This thing wants to kill me. This thing is abusing me. I have been slapped. I've been kicked. I've been choked.
Non-simulated, by the way.
Non-simulated, by the way. I've had all sorts of abuses hurled at me in this game, and I love it. Signing up to play it again.
Hell yeah.
But it's the point. And like, I'm trying to figure out words because now I'm all thinking about like, oh, remember that time you got thrown? Anyway.
I was just really thinking about the time where there's the photo of you in the white dress and it's just covered in blood.
I was playing a vampire at that point. So the game even tells you up front, like, vampires are cruel, they're predators. And there were times where I was criticizing my humans. I was telling them that they were worthless. I was throwing them into walls. But then I would come back to them with that empathy. And it's like whiplash. One moment, somebody is abusing you, yelling at you, telling you that you're going to die, that you're worthless. And the next minute, they're like, oh, somebody threw you into a wall. Here, let me clean the blood off your face. And all sorts of things happen. But the best thing is, with that system of abuse, is the connections that come out of it, either from the humans who are coming together out of their suffering, or the vampire human connection where it's like, hey, I see a little bit of myself in you because I was in this position. It's really great. So if you want to play this game, come talk to me afterwards.
I'm going to skip my next question. We'll come back to it because I think this is a great moment for how do safety tools allow us to go harder in these games? Because a lot of times when you're listening to a safety tool panel, you're going to hear a lot of, this is how you tell people no. Like, this is how we safely tell people no. This is how we tell people no in ways that they'll listen to you. This is how we keep our players safe in the negative. But as somebody who does a lot of safety writing, I like to view safety tools as, once again, an invitation. This is me showing you the net under the tightrope so that you know you will be safe. How slender do you want the tightrope to be? So I would love for y'all to either talk about that in like a larger theoretical sense or in your personal experience or...
So I don't think we've actually talked about this, Jax, and I have very different opinions from you on that.
Oh,
so
great.
This is going to be good.
Hell yeah, let's go.
So I was on a panel at Big Bad Con this past year where we were trying to change the language around safety tools and remove the language safety tools entirely and call them like communication facilitation tools, because that's really what they are. You only have to go on tabletop, I guess, Blue Sky now we're all on.
Hell yeah.
To find a million stories of actual plays where someone had something awful happen to them and the GM says, but there were safety tools.
Oh my God.
Safety tools aren't necessarily going to keep you safe. What they are is they're communication facilitation tools, and they're ways for us to communicate to each other in structured ways to make sure we're all on the same page. My second thing, this is another soapbox that Jax has heard.
Hell yeah.
And my opinions on this have changed somewhat, but I still believe that surprise is a false god when it comes to role-playing games. Sometimes surprise is useful, but you have to think about why you're doing it. Like, is this really something intentional? Because in a tabletop game, going ahead and say, hey, at the end of this, you're going to face your assaulter and they're going to do this to you. And then you have to play through the whole game knowing that's coming. That's just as scary.
Yep.
But knowing it's coming and being on the same page instead of whipping that out at someone and throwing at them and then making them have to X card in the moment is such a better thing to just tell people what's coming.
Yep.
Surprise is a false god. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Actually, to build off of that, so surprise is a false god, absolutely, and I definitely agree with that there. But also, it allows players to opt out because not every game is meant for every player.
Yes.
And I feel like safety tools or communication tools or whatever the hell we're calling them these days helps you realize, fuck it, I know this game has no trigger warnings in it, is not going to be for me. I'm a fucked up little child. I'm not going to look at that shit. But what I will look at is continue to look at, I can read the content warnings, I can read the safety tools and everything, part of Delta Green or Bluebeard's Bride or 10 Candles or what have you, and be able to say, actually, this is for me and I feel comfortable engaging with this. But also, these communication tools are for everybody regardless of what side of the table or, if you're a facilitator or not. I have X-carded live on stream before because somebody, I've X-carded as a GM live on stream before because somebody ended up running into something that I didn't know was going to trigger me, but oh my God, it did. Yeah. And so you have to, be able to communicate not only with the rest of your players, but also in that streaming situation, the person running your stream, but also yourself, to be able to check yourself and say, what do I need in this moment in order to be able to come back and take care of myself and also take care of the players. Because at that point, you can make adjustments when you take that break so that you can recalibrate with everybody around there and say, okay, do we feel comfortable going harder in this direction instead and continue to soak in the suffering this way? Or do we want to continue down this other path but not go so hard? So I think, Nat, you hit the nail on the head. Rebranding them as communication tools really allows people to have a better, more informed, and thus deliciously type 2 way, amount of play.
So surprisingly, Nat and Amber, I actually do agree with you on this one. I've also heard safety tools be referred to as risk mitigation tools on the idea that we're never going to be perfectly safe. And at a certain point, it is a semantic argument, but also at a certain point, it is worth looking at the tools in a different way. And I think everybody at this table can agree that if something wrong happens in your game and you go, but there were safety tools, someone wasn't using them correctly. Right. And it's probably the person saying, but there were safety tools. So, but Soraya, you look like you had something you wanted to say.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with everybody. I was just thinking about again, what Amber said, not every game is going to be for everyone, and that's okay. But for the games that it is for those certain types of people, it allows everyone to be on the same page and know, hey, this game deals with... I'm working on a game right now that's based on Project MK Ultra. There's human experimentation that happens. And I'm very big on transparency and making sure everybody knows what they're getting into when they sign up. So nobody can say, but I didn't know this was going to involve human experimentation. What did you think Project MK Ultra was? But it allows everybody to kind of buy in and know, all right, we're going to go hard. We're going to lean into this. We don't have to censor ourselves. And I'm glad that you brought up telling people what they can't do versus what you can do.
Yeah.
In a way. The very first time I ran that game, I focused so much on telling people what they couldn't do that by the end of it, they were like, question, so what can we do? And I was like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
Which they did.
They did a lot. It was great. There was a hot tub.
There was a hot tub.
I was there.
So after that, I retooled everything and gave everybody a baseline. I defined a bunch of things. Very important to do when you're dealing with these types of games, so everybody is on the same page and we can all get hurt consensually.
Yes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to make anyone out themselves as a kinkster on this panel, except for me. But, so much of seeing people who haven't had that experience is a lot of, reinventing the wheel almost, because there is a world of kinks out there, and, there's almost the same number of Type 2 games. So, a Type 2 game isn't always going to have the same content, isn't always going to have the same mechanics, isn't always going to have the same themes or the same triggers. And being super duper transparent and being like, hey, is this something you want to participate in? Not necessarily just because your friends are playing it, which, ooh boy, Soraya and I have major opinions on. But is this a thing you want to play? Is this a thing you want to play in this way? Are these people you want to play with? Right? And those are all really, really important for really any of these three games. Any of these three types of games. I have been in Delta Green games, for example, where the majority of the table was like, oh yeah, just burn it because it's Cthulhu monster. Like, that's a sentient being. Like, no, yeah, just burn it. Like, it doesn't matter because, like, that's our job. And they weren't saying it in character, they were saying it out of character because, oh yeah, Delta Green is my power fantasy of being a cop that kills Cthulhu monsters. When the entire point of the game is, hey, agents of the state will depersonalize things they've already monstered and will cause them to commit heinous violence. And that is a very specific type of systemic and personal horror. Because you are now playing someone who is actually being threatened, but also wields an enormous amount of power in the spaces they exist in. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to say on this topic?
This is how do personal and systemic horror feed each
No,
other?
I was actually just about to ask that question if we didn't have anything else to say on the topic. Just finishing up on safety tools and expectations.
I mean, I'm always pro anything that like gets people actually talking and engaging with like the concepts of the game even further, because like, you know, there's a difference between like, okay, we're 5 friends that went to college together and we're playing D&D and we're going to be the big heroes versus, hey, actually I have this like this really intense idea of how we can reclaim Washington, D.C. and Vampire the Masquerade and do it in a way that like completely fucks up the canon of the game, but it doesn't matter. But you know, your player that, tying back to the earlier point that I believe Soraya said, like, are these the people you want to play with? The people that I play D&D for shits and giggles with, I'm not going to go around and be like, all right, I'm going to go to Monstrosity and have them fuck me up for a weekend. Absolutely not. Like, those are going to be two separate types of people, I feel. Sometimes it's fun to go be like your hero and not have to think about it. And sometimes it's fun to like, sit in the suffering. So yeah, thank you.
And to be clear, all of us enjoy type 1 games as well.
Oh, yes.
Like, it is super fun to just do silly, heartwarming stuff. Like, I'm running a playtest of a LARP tomorrow, which you should come to, called the Cinnamon Bakery, which is a Christmas market, community building. Like, there's a bit where you get to sing carols together. It's very charming. There's plushies involved. It was written by a dear friend of mine, so I'm very excited. You can put as much fun into a Type 1 game as you can into a Type 2 game. The difference being is the Type 2 game has a lot more potential to, I don't want to say do harm, because a Type 1 game also has potential to do harm. I think the Type 2 has the more obvious potential to do harm. But that doesn't make it any less worth playing. Just means you have to be a little more careful. Because we had a lovely natural transition there, how do personal and systemic horror feed into each other?
Okay, so I'm going to actually plug one of the games I worked on a little bit. The Emmy Award-winning RPG Chew, based off of the comic Chew, which I worked on. So I'm going to call it a Type 2 game that masquerades as a Type 1 game. Chew is a blaze-in-the-dark oriented system that's all about going in and solving food crimes. And it is really comedic. It is about like, oh, wow. I mean, one of the sample scenarios I ran at like PAX U and at Gen Con was like, you're stopping the long man guy from like the Japanese commercials. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's just a game of blowjob jokes. But like at its very core, like you know, even though, yeah, you gotta like stop the guy that's making everyone like suck hot dogs. Oh no, but like there's a banality to it because you're still playing an agent that has to go out day in, day out and like solve these crimes and solve these murders and like be really deep in the investigation as part. I mean, if you've read the comic, you're probably fully aware of how deep and painful it is. I can't believe I cried over a comic about chickens, but it is what it is. But I mean, yeah, there's still like that element of like how much of yourself in these games are you fusing? Like how much of yourself are you putting in with your personal horror in the like gamified systemic horror? And like with Chew in particular, you have to like, you know, ensure that you don't get caught up in like, okay, well, here's another bad guy you have to go chase. Here you go. Oh, here's more people that have died of bird flu, which also is back. Love that for us. So just things to think about there.
Also, can I say how horrifying it is that, like, one of the missions is you have to stop a guy who's causing people to suck hot dogs in public? Like, that's humiliating and painful. And then you have to be the person who's like, yeah, my job is stopping this guy who's forcing people to suck hot dogs in public, and then nobody takes you seriously. And wow, that's its own kind of personal horror.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess I'll also plug my game. I am working on a game right now that is a combination of personal and systemic horror. It's called Salvation, and it is about a small southern town on the border of North Carolina and Virginia that's going through the Great Depression. They're been screwed over by the Tennessee Valley Authority. The town is on its way to being a ghost town, and then on top of that, they murdered an angel.
Oh.
So you have the fact that these people are going through the horrors, capital H, with systemic poverty, violence, abuse. It's set in the 1930s. And then on top of that, God has decided to enact his revenge. So it really does kind of play off into that, because then they start thinking, is this my personal horror, or is this the wrath of God? Well, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. And then I like playing historically flavored games. So a lot of times the characters that I play, a lot of their personal horror comes from the systemic horror of the setting, the time period, the location, and just seeing how those two feed off of each other really dinks you dink. Really makes you, again, the past is the scariest thing.
Hi, I heard we're plugging our own things. I actually released a zine last night called Ossuary, which is a TTRPG setting you can use, where I literally took my personal horror and turned it into a system for the world. It's a place for unwanted things, and the place doesn't want you there. And turned that very personal horror into a system. So if you're interested in that, check out Ossuary.
It's on itch.
It's on itch.io, luckoftheharbor.itch.io. Also, I want to talk about one of my favorite games that kind of pivots to the next question, the last question. Because unless you had something you wanted to say on this one, Jack.
Go ahead.
Which is a game called Dream Askew by Avery Alder, which is a game about a queer commune in the apocalypse. Surviving, and it has this wonderful idea that like I've really been thinking about a lot lately, is that the apocalypse doesn't happen to everyone at the same time. That there's these queer people, you're part of a commune living at the margins of society, and the apocalypse has happened to you. It's happening. But for some people, everything is just normal still, and you have to interact with these people who are not experiencing the apocalypse while you are. And that is one of my favorite intersections of personal and systemic horror.
If you weren't gonna bring that up, I was, because that is
great.
one of my favorite parts of Dream Askew.
Yes.
The apocalypse in Dream Askew is it's a psychic maelstrom, I believe, and it's mostly been affecting like queer people poor people, mad people, like people who are more quote unquote susceptible to it. And then, of course, you still have these white suburban enclaves that are like, what? Everything's fine. Like, I guess there's more ethnic crime than usual. But no, it's fine. Like, what's the problem? I can still go to Starbucks. I did say this panel was going to be spicy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games in these genres that I love, but I want to let my panelists talk about some of them.
Okay, so I want to talk about a game that probably no one is expecting to be brought up in this panel because it's the cutest, cuddliest game ever, called Wander Home.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite things about Wander Home is if you flip through the book, if you look at it, you're like, oh, this is a cute pastoral fantasy about animals. And then you scratch it even a little bit, and it is about deeply hurt people healing from their trauma and wars and orphans and awful things people have done to each other, and what do you do after that awfulness has ended. And I really recommend, if you've just seen Wander Home and are like, that's too cute and cuddly for me, read the book.
Yep.
Read the book.
Yep.
Yeah.
The author of Wander Home is also currently writing a game on their Patreon called the 7-Part Pact, which is very strongly based on the patriarchal wizard system of a Wizard of Earthsea. And every single player every single character is a cis male, to the best of my understanding. And they all have their own little mini games that interact with each other that can thwart other people's mini games. And you're all GMs for each other while also being players in each other's games. And it is this weird patriarchal power play orrery of a game that is still going through changes, and it is just incredible to watch this game be watching this game be developed is a type 2 experience.
Yeah.
It's stunning.
Having gotten a chance to play in a playtest, maybe this has changed, but actually, you all at least are masquerading as cis men.
Oh, okay.
Many of you actually aren't, but you're pretending. Some of you are pretending to be the patriarchy.
Oh, okay, so they did include the
yes.
dragonfly. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
May I?
Yeah.
So speaking of J-Dragon games,
Hell yeah.
so J-Dragon, before Wander Home, before Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, before all of this, J-Dragon wrote a game called The Flower Court. And
Oh,
it
that's a deep
is,
cut.
I'm sorry?
That's a deep cut.
It's a deep cut, and it's actually my favorite by them. The Flower Court is actually more of a LARP than it is like a tabletop game, so everyone should play it. You can put it together very easily. But it is, again, on its surface, it appears like it is a type 1 game because it's everyone getting together and, oh, we're all royalty and, oh, we're flirting with each other and, oh my God, like, what's it like to, like, be so important? But here's the thing. You're all, like, this game is set in, like, a far distant, really fucked up, like, cyberpunk corpo future that it's actually very similar to, like, Ziggurat, I think.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
Keep going.
Anyway, but you are playing as, like, princearchs and other, like, monarchs or whatever.
I've downloaded this game.
Yes, it's very good. And you're all literally flirting with each other and, like, sitting in each other's laps and, like, being very, like, alluring. But you also are doing this knowing that the people that you are meant to be representing are suffering. You are living lavishly and living at, like, the top of everyone else's means because you are a benefactor of all of that suffering. And it, like, really kind of fucks with you because you're like, oh, shit, like, I know I am playing this character that is actually the worst person ever, but my goal is to, you know, fuck with this person and this person and this person. Yeah, it really sat with me for a little bit after, like, the first time I played it, but
Well, Flower Court coming to MAGFest 2026, I
Hell yeah.
guess.
I already have it.
Hell yeah, let's go.
I can't think of the name of this game, which is a shame. I've been sitting here racking my brain about it, but it's pure Type 2. It takes place in World War II. And
Night Witches.
Huh?
Gray ranks.
What?
Night Witches are gray ranks.
Neither.
Oh, shit. Okay, keep going.
It takes place in World War II, where you and the other players live in an apartment building, and you are either a communist, a journalist, a member of the Intelligista. I can't believe I used that
Quick,
word. I'm sorry.
everybody Google it.
I'm sorry.
I think I know what game you're talking about. I'm Googling it. We're good.
And you're hiding in an attic because the Gestapo has showed up. It's a wonderful game. Everybody I know who's played it has loved it, but it's pure Type 2. And I can't remember what it's called because it's a great game and I think everybody should play it.
Yeah, Nat's going to look it up.
Please hold for Googling.
Something I actually do want to talk about, and Soraya can slap me on the wrist for this. One of the first specifically POC written Type 2 games was Steal Away Jordan, which is about being an escaped slave in the American South. And at the
I'm
time,
wrong.
Somebody already wrote that?
yeah.
Oh. I mean, I'm glad that it exists, but I
it
was also working on that.
It was written by Julia Ellingbo. Oh no, we have one slave story. Clearly you can't write another
know.
one. What the
There
fuck?
can be two things.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel really dirty for having said that. If this gets clipped and put on Twitch and like, Jax is a racist. Ugh. Anyway, but Steal Away Jordan by Julia Ellingbo was one of the first games written sort of in a POC-focused Type 2 gaming genre, and there was a huge outcry about it, mostly from white game designers.
Of course.
Soraya, tell us how you feel.
Hey, white people. I'm gonna get close to you. Everybody open your ears. Can you hear me? Y'all hear me? We don't give a fuck about what you think.
Yeah, and this goes back to a game this goes back to something we said much earlier in the panel, is not every game is for every person. And as a white people, maybe playing a game about being an escaped slave is not a game for you. That's okay. It's a game for someone else to tell that story, and that's cool. That doesn't make you a racist, but that story is not for you to tell, and that's okay. I mean, if somebody invites you to play the game and you want to play the game, that's great. But there's been a couple of other games in that vein where white people have been trying to, and it's not.
It's again
Pan's getting spicy.
goes back to why people play Type 2 games. Like,
Yeah.
I'll admit, I write, again, like I said, I write a lot of historical based horror, honestly, and it's a good way to experience how we overcome.
Yep.
And sometimes some people are into that. It's not everybody's bag, and that's okay. But when it comes to something that's not for you,
It's not morally wrong
It's
if
not
a
morally
game
wrong.
is not for you.
and I
That's
don't give
okay.
and I don't give a fuck about your opinion on that.
Something I think a lot of people mistake, and just in our daily lives too, especially in more general trauma discourse, a lot of times people tend to mistake the person who is the most hurt is the person who is the most morally correct in this situation and should be able to dictate everything that happens. And this is also really important in safety tools. For example, look, we're coming full circle. We're doing it. We're doing a thesis statement. It's very exciting. But like, for example, with Monstrosity, the system for, hey, somebody assaulted me in game in a way that was actively harmful to me, the way the safety tools work is, how do we help you first? Addressing the aggressor is like third or fourth on the list. And that person does not get to dictate what happens to the aggressor. Because a lot of times when we're traumatized, when we're upset, when we're harmed, our brain is so fucked up into just annihilative terror that the only way we can think of is that person needs to be destroyed first, because otherwise they'll destroy me. And that's a really interesting thing you can experience in Type 2 games, and it's actually, for something like Deviant the Renegades, Changeling the Lost, Delta Green, that is actually a feeling I recommend you explore at your table with the understanding that that is the feeling you're exploring. It is not something I recommend exploring out of game. No. It sucks out of game. We have about 15 minutes left, and I would love to invite some audience participation. So if you want to ask a question, that's great. If you want to ask a question but you're feeling a little shy, I have some swag up here, and I will throw swag at you if it will cause you to ask thoughtful questions. You, sir, in the blue mask.
One of the things you recommended when you were like one of your first slides,
Mm-hmm.
you talked about Dark Sun.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is in a more like classical sense, how do you think like mechanics and combat, because it's D&D at the end of the day, how do you think like mechanics and combat kind of intersect with still?
I'm so glad you asked that question because goddamn, I have such huge feelings about how people use D&D as an everything system. I don't even believe an everything system exists. Sorry, GURPS. But yeah, it is the third system for everything. But for D&D, Dark Sun is a really interesting example, and specifically why I picked Dark Sun is because magic doesn't work in Dark Sun. Psionics do, and psionics will lash back on your character, and while you still have that sort of central gameplay loop of D&D of fight monsters, get treasure, fight monsters, get treasure, there is a sort of desperation to that gameplay loop in Dark Sun that you do not see in other settings because it is a setting where if you do not fight the monster and you do not get treasure, you might be executed, you might starve, you might not have access to whatever is replenishing your psionic well. So the reason I chose Dark Sun is specifically because the heroic fantasy mechanics of D&D become a more desperate sort of heroic fantasy. Yes.
Okay.
I'll get you in a sec. Go ahead.
We were discussing safety tools and as opposed to talking recommends communicative tools or risk reduction and bringing into my think and the BDSM community. The reason that we move away from safe, sane, and consensual to risk aware. And I think part of that was like connected to what you're talking about. One of them communicates respectability.
Yes.
In a way that makes it much more difficult to opt out. Because if you say, well, I did this thing and I consented because I knew what the risks were, and those risks were changed, that is something different than I thought what I was doing was insane and that opts me out of saying, I also need to be safe.
Yep. No, I think that's a really good point. I'm sorry, you had your hand up, and I'll come to you in a second.
How do I find people to play Delta?
Good question. I'm going to let some of my more social media folks.
At SorayaPloitation, bluesky.social.
Ask.
Yeah, no, literally, just ask. I mean, I would say obviously, like, if you have some friends that you're like, I think I want to play. I feel like Delta Green is a really great, like, introductory type 2 game. So I want to play Delta Green. Oh my God, I don't think this friend would be great for Delta Green, but maybe let me ask this other friend. I mean, the worst you can hear is no, but, you know, it's better to hear a no, I don't think this is right for me, versus, yeah, let me go ahead and play with you, and then, oh my God, I cannot play with you ever again. You broke my trust during the course of this game.
Yeah.
So always ask. And again, thespacejamber.bluesky.social.
We'll be plugging our socials at the
You
end
can
of
also
this.
find me at Labyrinth Games and
I
Puzzles on
will
Tuesdays.
fight you, Amber. All right, can you raise your hands like real high just so I can see everyone? All right, I'm going to start here and then we're going to go around. Go ahead.
So, I am also very much into risk-aware consensual kink.
Woo!
And, surprises are for suckers.
Yeah.
But I very much view gaming and kink as a place where failure is safe.
Yeah.
Yes.
One way is to fail in a way that we do not die.
Yep.
Or experience some horrible trauma. Can you talk about failure as an element of Type 2 games?
I love this question. Can we get a round of applause for this question? This is a great question. Also, I'm going to throw you one of my Matt Mercer isn't real buttons. Woo! Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. I did not mean for that to go.
I can hand it
Why? We're aware of the risks. So one of my favorite statements for basically any game is experiencing high consequence emotions in a low consequence environment. And that's not to say it's a no consequence environment. If you're being a dick to someone in a high consequence situation, they're probably not going to want to play with you again. But it is not the same as if you stab someone, you're going to jail. So yeah, no, I'm a huge, huge advocate for that, and failure is a massive part of that. Anybody else?
Can I talk about Tremere and what happened?
Twimeo, yes, you can talk about the Twimeo. We're going to talk a little bit about a LARP we're running later tonight.
Yes, you can actually
right after this one.
Yeah, please go to Magnolia 1 and 2 at 6:30 to play Tremere Academic Symposium.
In 11 minutes.
Yes, so I had a very, very, very traumatic breakup last year, which it happens. It just happens. And exactly a month to the day after this breakup, I ended up at a house con with a bunch of these lovely people, and we played a game called Tremere Academic Symposium, and I thought that was going to be the second goofiest game of the weekend, and it actually killed me. And my boss from the game is sitting right here. Yeah. I was trying to win your favor all fucking night, but this is the thing.
I got it right down your hoodie too.
As that game was happening, my ex and my best friend were meeting to like give my stuff over. And I had already previously told him twice not to contact me. And I was very nervous that this was going to blow up and it was going to be very bad. As Jack said earlier in the day to me privately, I catastrophize everything more than anybody else she knows, but it's true. Anyway, so as my character is presenting at Tremere Academic Symposium, she has a massive failure. It was so funny. She has a massive failure, and like she accidentally commits diablerie in front of the entire crowd. It'd be like that, you know, when you think you're draining a squirrel, and actually it's a guy.
For those of you that don't play Vampire the Masquerade, which
Good job.
good job. Diablerie is bad. It's where you
It's vampire cannibalism.
Yeah.
Anyway, so my character did that, and then she had a power called Was I Here? Where you can disappear out of the room and make everyone forget that you were there, and that's what she did. But, you know, I was actually very much, even though the moment itself in-game was very, very serious, very, very funny, sorry, I was having a serious moment outside of game, and I actually allowed that to play into, like, the suffering of my character, like, hearing from Bishop, you were so close. You almost had it. And then I checked my phone, and my ex was texting me about if we could still be friends, and that was really bad.
Yeah.
And then I had to tell him not to contact me. But yeah, like, it is, in these games, you're encouraged to fail. I mean, especially if it ends up making if it gives a piece of levity to a really stressful game for people who feel like they can't fail or they need some kind of light in that moment. And if that failure you have is kind of low stakes for your character, why not go into it, because everyone else is suffering around you. So, LOL. Don't commit to diablerie.
Sorry.
Okay. I was playing in a LARP about 5 years ago that was set in the 1920s. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the 1920s was really bad for a lot of people, for a lot of reasons. And my character got mouthy with a cop, and it did not go in my favor. But it was a lot better to happen in the LARP than in real life.
Yeah.
And it kind of just is like, you know, failing in the game, fine, cool. All right, I took that one on the chin. Failing in real life, not so much.
Nat, you wanted to?
Yeah, sorry. This is a somewhat tangential, just quick Nat rant. Yeah, another Nat rant TM. So we've been doing a lot of comparisons of kink and role-playing games and this, and I think the similarity is that they're both things that structured communication is very valuable. But I do want to be very clear that a personal pet peeve of mine is that most of the role-playing games we're playing aren't involving consensual non-consent, and that, like, you don't just need to wait for the X card to stop things. You can say, hey, that didn't feel good. Or, I don't like that happened. Can we change that? And you don't have to wait and not take someone seriously until they use the safe word. We're not doing kink most of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's...
Yeah, I mean, like, perfection is the enemy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me to go off of that. Like, perfection is the enemy of good. I mean, if you are trying to have the perfect Type 2 game and... No, you're stupid. Like, I mean, yeah, communicate as soon as it hurts, because otherwise you're going to end up damaging yourself and others even more.
And more so than any other type of game, you're not going to have a perfect Type 2 game, because the perfect Type 2 game doesn't exist.
Perfection is a false god.
That's right.
Correct.
We have a lot of false gods. I saw some hands over here. Yes.
So one of the biggest actual role-playing tropes is that everything evolves into comedy, whether you intend for it to or not. One thing I've experienced in Type 2 games is it's kind of hard to keep things serious when they need to be serious and allow tension, or at least when tension needs to be. You talked about your experience with handling comedy and levity in the Type 2 gaming experience.
I'm so glad you asked this, because I just play tested a LARP based on the tabletop game Witch Road to Lindisfarne, which is a very, very classic tabletop game. In the LARP version, the setting is slightly updated. There are actually 4 female characters and 3 male characters. So you're actually dealing with a lot of internalized misogyny in the game, as opposed to just the misogyny in Witch Road to Lindisfarne. And my lovely person sitting up front here, Cass, played the witch. And something we did before the beginning, before we went into game, was talk about a sociological concept called a magic circle. And the magic circle is a space in which we all agree that the serious thing is happening. Even if we want to make a little silly giggle haha, the serious thing is happening. And we should respect that the serious thing is happening, and you can do that out of game, and that's fine. And sometimes it's just as simple as, like, oh, you thought of a funny comment, maybe save it until later or until one of the breaks. Another Road to Lindisfarne, which is the LARP version, also has structured breaks within the gameplay, so you're actually coming out to discuss scenes and discuss how they went, and that helps alleviate a lot of the I need to turn this tense moment into comedy. And something my magic circle does is allows for in-game moments of, like, oh, this the nun wants to make a crack about the witch. You know, she could have been the witch if someone had looked at her funny. And we also, during one of our flashback scenes, which was between the witch and the knight, and it was them falling in love, and we had the other 3 female characters as just this Greek chorus of absolute harpies. Just like, oh, I can't believe he's going into her house. Who does she think she is? I heard she made her father sick so that she could inherit what little wealth he has. Why is she just, she's a jumped up harlot, etc. And they were playing these characters who had this very, very realistic internalized misogyny for most of the game. And then you're essentially seeing them do, like, the fucking comic book version of misogyny for these couple of scenes. And what that actually wound up doing was pushing the tension of that scene harder, because while they're getting to have a little silly giggle haha, these other players are feeling very surveilled. And that was a really, really cool release of that tension. That is the purpose of the Greek chorus, right? Is to sort of structure that flow. And I think for that game specifically, that really helped. The magic circle is one of my favorite concepts because it is something everybody agrees to. And it allows you to come back to a point of, okay, this is the thing we are agreeing that is happening in this game. This is the thing we agree that is important. If we cannot respect the thing that is important, we can take ourselves out of game for a couple minutes if we need to.
I'm a big believer in, I like comedy, I like horror. Those moments of levity can help, like Jack said, like illustrate the horrors. I'm a big fan of tone setting up front. Hey, we're playing a fucked up vampire game. We're not playing What We Do in the Shadows. I have my MK Ultra game is Sin and Surveillance. It's written in the style of an exploitation, just because it's exploitative as fuck, and everything I've found out about it is like, wow, what the hell? And in the design document, I talk about how this might feel like a comedy. It might feel lighthearted. It might feel like a joke. There's a character who writes lesbian erotica. There's a guy who is really into his wife cheating on him. This is just to illustrate how fucked up everything is. So there's a difference between, I think there's definitely a difference between, oh, haha, funny comedy LARP, haha, versus somebody makes a throwaway crack joke that really illustrates like, oh my God, are we the baddies?
Yeah, those are important moments. Either of you have anything you want to say on the topic?
No, I got nothing.
I think we had a question.
All right, we have time for like 2 more quick questions, so I'm gonna go to you and then I'm gonna go to you. So you go first. Hi.
Earlier you were talking about like inviting people to these types of games
Mm-hmm.
and like being upfront.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice on what to do if you invite someone to the game and you're upfront and they're like, I'm interested, and then you go through all your consent tools and you go through all your safety tools and you set the tone of your game, you play your game, you have like multiple channels for these people to communicate either as a group or with just the GM. And then suddenly you realize that they've been miserable the whole game and they feel like their bounties are crossed, but they never told you. And then like
Give them an out. Just give them an out at that point. If you've communicated, if you've done your due diligence, and they either weren't listening or heard the wrong thing, because unfortunately that's the problem with communication, is you can say all the right words, and then someone's going to look through for an ulterior motive in your words, and then they're going to try to react to that first. Not that I've ever dealt with that in my life as a traumatized person. But if they didn't hear what you said and you were up front and they're just miserable, just give them an out. At that point, what they're looking for is permission to be able to leave and not treat this like a second job.
Yeah.
One consent mechanic I always put on the table at my first session, and I make sure it's very clear, is open table. That I think in D&D culture, there's such a like, oh, you know, so-and-so couldn't make it, so we couldn't play. And that's become a meme within our community. But really, if someone can't make it to your table, it's better that they're not there, and saying like, hey, you don't have to come. Don't let this be an obligation, and making sure that it's very clear and reminding it every so often of, hey, if this isn't working for you, you don't have to do this. And then not taking it personally when they take you up on it.
Yeah.
I have a similar policy in the games that I run, and quite a few other LARP runners do as well, called The Door is Always Open. And that's something that I impress upon people before they sign up, as I'm onboarding them at the beginning of game. Door's always open. You can leave. Player before game, always.
Yep, always.
You are more important than this game going off. If you can't be in this game because you don't like the content, because your ex is there, because it's inaccessible, because you're hungry, the door is open.
Yep.
Please use it.
I saw one more hand over there, and then we're just going to go through our closing statements. Go ahead.
So I'm relatively new to Type 2 gaming,
Mm-hmm.
and you mentioned a lot of games that sound really creative and interesting. How it's somewhat difficult to remember names.
Would you like me to go through the list again?
Well, I was wondering if there was like an online list.
Oh my gosh, not really. These are really my personal picks, but I'd be happy to go through the slides for you while we do our closing statements.
We could put them up on Blue Sky.
Oh, we can
We're
put them
gonna
up
tell
on
them
Blue
to follow
Sky. You
us.
can follow us on Blue Sky. Wow, crazy. I guess we'll just that's a great lead into our final statements. So I'm gonna start from Amber, and then we're gonna go here. Please, who you've been, what you do, and where you are in Blue Sky.
Oh my God. Who I've been? Oh my God. Well, I don't know my past lives, but I know that my current life. See, that's a Changeling the Dreaming joke. I'm Amber Logston. You can find me at thespacejamber.bluesky.social. You can also find me running all of the marketing for Labyrinth Games and Puzzles down in Eastern Market. Please come. We have a puzzle sale next week.
Hell yeah.
Thanks.
And if you stay until the end of closing announcements, you can come get some swag. That's very exciting.
I'm Natalie Putum. I publish games as Luck of the Harbor. My game Sapphic Space Pirates is available on itch.io right now, along with Ossuary, a horror RPG setting zine. And my game Warren Guard, which is a game about found family and dragon riders, is currently available for pre-order and will be out early this year.
Yay. Wait, where are you on Blue Sky?
Oh, Luck of the Harbor.
Hell yeah.
I am now legally Soraya Spinner. And you can find me on Blue Sky at Soraya Ploitation. Soraya spelled Sereia, Ploitation. And what am I working on right now? Sin and Surveillance. If you like the 60s, if you like shitting on the CIA, for legal purposes, that's a joke.
Would the NSA agent in the panel reveal themselves, please? You're legally obligated.
You're legally obligated to. I'm also working on a game of personal and historical horror. Wow. Called Desecration. So if you like mummies and fucked up curses, you should follow me on Blue Sky or Patreon.
I was about to plug that. I was about to say, in case you didn't, that you write amazing essays on Patreon, and you should all.
They do.
I have a lot of feelings.
And I have been your erstwhile moderator, Jacqueline Brick. You can find me on most social media, including Blue Sky, as Rufflejax at bluesky, .bluesky.social. That's RUFFLEJAX. If you would like some swag, I have a limited edition Matthew Mercer Isn't Real button that you can come get for free. I only have 8 of them left, so please come get them. I also have these lovely stickers. They say Jack's Fest Screaming and Crying Festival, so please feel free to come get one. Thank you so much. If you survived this entire panel, we loved having you. Please come to the LARP room if you're interested in trying out some LARPs this weekend, and have a wonderful MAGFest, everybody.
Jax also has an excellent Patreon. Give her money.
Shut up!
Please give us money.